Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And happy belated Vijaya greetings to you all. And we are in the middle of reading from Swami Ramakrishna talk, The Necessity of Religion. And I think he's broken some sort of world record here. There is a 4-page paragraph coming up. This one is only a little over 3 pages, but then there's a 4-pager coming up. So once he gets going on something, he keeps right on going. All right, so he continues here. My friend would be perfectly right if enjoyment were the only one passion of our life. But fortunately, that is not the case. Were it be the case, what difference would there be between a man and an animal? An animal knows nothing more than eating and drinking. And if man also does not know anything more than that, there would virtually be no difference between himself and an animal. Yeah, I'm not quite sure he's right there. I think some animals certainly enjoy play. They like to play with each other. They like to play fighting. They show a certain amount of curiosity too. So I think that at least for many animals, there's something more than just eating and drinking. And he forgot procreating, so you certainly got that. So anyway, the point is well taken. They don't tend to read books or talk about philosophy. So a man is far higher than an animal inasmuch as he possesses a mind and an intellect which always crave after knowledge. Man cannot rest satisfied with pleasure alone, but there is another innate tendency of his mind that always leads him to search after the truth of things. This is known as his hunger after knowledge. This distinguishes him from an animal and raises him up to the level of God. Along with the idea of pleasure and pain, he has the idea of right and wrong, and he derives a sort of peculiar satisfaction in doing what is right and avoiding what is wrong. That's most people, but some people unfortunately get a delight in doing wrong things and getting away with doing wrong things and that type of thing. Knowledge is power. By means of knowledge, we can know the art of acquiring longevity, and knowledge also helps him in his enjoyment, of pleasure. This hunger after knowledge, therefore, does not allow him to rest satisfied with sensual enjoyments alone, but always urges him to know who he is, whence he is, and where he is to go. Urged by it, man questions, am I really mortal? Do I end with the end of my life? Did I exist before my birth? And through a process of reasoning, he finds out that he is neither the body nor the life. When he sleeps soundly, although he does not do anything at the time, his life is in full play. That shows that his vital energies act independently of him. That is, they are independent of and separate from him. When he is under the influence of chloroform, even if any portion of his body is mangled and mutilated, he will know that only when the action of chloroform ceases and he returns to those injured parts. This shows that he is separate from his body. When he analyzes his mind, he finds out that it is a bundle of thoughts and ideas, and when he analyzes any of his thoughts or ideas, he finds out that no thought or idea is possible independent of the body, as the contact of the body with the external world brings forth all our knowledge and experience, and our thoughts and ideas solely depend upon that knowledge for their existence. As such, ideas depend upon the body for their existence. I don't know, you can think of things that aren't real, so there are some things you can think of, and there are things you can imagine that you've never experienced. So, of course, they would probably depend on having previous experiences to draw on, but still, there's some aspect of your thoughts that can be somewhat independent of previous experiences. You can modify those, I guess you could say. Hence, his mind cannot be independent of the body. But he has proved that he is independent of the body. Therefore, he finds out that he is separate from his mind, even which cannot exist independent of the body. I think I would qualify that and say more like the brain. The brain is certainly dependent on the body, but we have a certain amount of evidence that the mind is not dependent on the body. People can have mental experiences out of the body, out-of-body experiences, what they're called. And people have near-death experiences and psychic experiences and so forth that indicate that the mind is separate from the body, but the brain is not separate from the body. And we usually think of the mind as working through the brain, but there's these specialized incidences that seem to indicate that the mind can operate independent of the physical brain. So his very mind proves to him that he is separate from his body, his life, as well as his mind. Now, body and life are mortal, but he is neither the body nor the life. Therefore, he may not be mortal like them. And again, when he considers that he is something beyond mind, he cannot but conclude himself to be changeless, change being the characteristic of the mind. And because he is changeless, he must therefore be immortal or deathless, for death means a sudden change in a certain course of affairs. Yes, and of course we've said many times that Brahman has the characteristics of infinite, undivided, and unchanging or changeless. So he's already covered that one aspect, that we must have at least that nature of Brahman being the changeless. In this way, reasoning shows him that he is immortal, and that with the body he does not die, that with the changes of his body he does not change, and that because he is immortal and changeless, he must be eternal, and as such, he must have existed even before his coming in contact with his present body and life. He then finds out the truth in Sri Krishna's immortal teaching when the great personage exhorts his friend Arjuna in the following way, quote, It is not a fact that these kings, yourself, as well as myself, did not exist before this our present birth, nor even is it a fact that all of us shall not exist after this life, unquote. This affirmation of the great master serves to corroborate his rational conclusion, and he feels that he existed and shall exist eternally. Although apparently mortal, when he identifies himself with his body, he knows himself to be really immortal. He also arrives at this conclusion by studying his own nature. Every being wants to have whatever is natural to it, and hates and repudiates even the idea of those things which are not natural to it. Every being naturally hates death. That shows that death is natural to no being, and therefore the opposite, or deathlessness, or immortality, is the nature of each and every one of living beings. Thus he finds out that his very nature shows him his immortality. It is the nature of fish, for example, to live in water, and therefore water is what it loves most. And if it hates anything at all here, it is the idea of going out of the water. In the same way, he finds out that because death is not his nature, he hates it, and because immortality is his nature, he loves it. Well, that's kind of an interesting way of putting it, that we yearn for what our true nature really is, and our true nature really is the infinite, undivided, unchanging Brahman. Atman is one with Brahman, and that is our true nature. So we seek those things even within this confounds of Maya. And of course, that's a very frustrating experience, trying to find the infinite, undivided, unchanging within Maya, within our particular human lifespan, within the limitations of what we can know and what we can feel and what we can acquire in this life. That's a very frustrating experience, because everything that we experience within Maya is exactly the opposite. It's finite, divided, and changing. And so that's why we have a necessity for religion, which guides us in a direction of identifying with our true nature rather than the apparent nature within the realm of Maya. Another fact also confirms him in his conclusion, and that is this: it is the nature of man to be careful after an error is pointed out to him, and the next time he is less prone to commit such a mistake. No man commits the mistake over and over again. He may commit the same mistake 3 or 4 times if he is exceptionally dull, but after repeated warnings, he is sure to avoid that mistake. Now, of course, we're all familiar with our computers and how something that worked yesterday doesn't seem to work today. And so we then try it again, and we try it again. And sometimes if you come back the next day and try it again, it'll suddenly work. So our experience in the computer work is sometimes a little different. But yes, we try not to make the same mistake over and over again. And as teachers will tell you, sometimes some students do keep committing the same mistake over and over again, and it takes them a long time. I had a geometry teacher who had taught many different levels of math, from very basic math to what was then the highest math they taught at that school, which was math analysis. They didn't teach calculus yet. But she would say that to her basic math students, she had to repeat things 22 times before they got it. To her geometry students, she had to repeat them 7 times. In her math analysis students, she expected us to get it the first time. So it does depend on the quality of the brain and the mind and the student's desire to understand things quickly, how many times one has to go through things before they get it. There is a saying that an intelligent or first-class man learns only by hearing. Second-class man learns by seeing, and a dull or third-class man learns after repeated failures by doing it himself. Well, I don't know. There's also educational theory has that some people simply learn differently. They have different styles of learning. Some people learn better by doing. Some people learn better by hearing, and some people learn better by seeing. And some people need a bit of all of those modes to get things clearly in their minds. So I think it's more of a learning process rather than calling one class dull. They simply have different learning modes. This shows that even a dull man learns to do things correctly at last, except an exceptionally dull fellow. No one stumbles upon the same stone for more than 4 or 5 times. This is the nature of all human beings. But there is a strange case of exception with regard to this nature of his, and that is this. When Yudhishthira was asked by Dharma as to what was the most wonderful thing in the world, he answered that every day lots of beings go to the abode of death, and the rest, although they daily experience this fact, think that they will live here forever. What is more wonderful than that? Although he daily sees that his relatives, friends, and neighbors take their farewell from the world to go to the abode of death, from whose bourne no traveler ever returns, although he daily reads in the newspaper about the several deaths all around the world, he completely forgets all that and thinks and believes himself a permanent settler here. Although he is warned about the fact every day of his life, every day he commits the same mistake. This extraordinary nature of his, which clearly contradicts his ordinary nature, fully shows that he is naturally and essentially an immortal being, and therefore he cannot bring himself to believe that he is mortal at all, although he daily experiences mortality everywhere around him. Can a man ever think himself to be a woman, although he is daily urged by others to believe himself to be one? By his very birth and nature, he is a man, and how can he ever imagine himself to be a woman at all, although the whole world testifies against his natural conviction? Similarly, because a human being is naturally immortal, it is impossible for him to think of himself otherwise. That also is something that is not exactly true anymore. People can imagine themselves to change their gender identity and then proceed to do so. It was an interesting, we had one lady here that came to every Friday night class until she was too ill to come. And one time her brother was passing away, and just before he passed away, he affirmed, "I am not going to die. I am not going to die." And that disturbed her, but then I pointed out that perhaps he had glimpsed his immortality beyond death, which does happen to people at the moment of death. They realize that their true nature is not just in the body and the mind, but in the spirit, and it will last beyond that particular event. And of course, even though people don't seem to come back from death in the same form, we know that they come back in some other form. They can come back with a different gender. In fact, people don't come back necessarily with the same gender every lifetime. And we have many cases of people remembering past lives where they lived, so people definitely do come back, even though when somebody dies, you don't expect them to pop back into life in the same body, in the same form, unless it's a near-death experience, and they do. All right, so in this way, of course, he's talking about the vast majority here. He's not talking about the exceptional cases. In this way, he learns that he is immortal, and his life is not the short span between his birth and death, that the earth where he is destined to live only for a few years, cannot be his home at all, and that it is merely a place of sojourn in his immortal and eternal career. And as a man can have no attachment to his place of sojourn, he naturally loses all his attachment to the world. Looking at his eternal life, his ephemeral worldly life seems to him to be altogether insignificant. So long as a man studies about the earth of ours and learns that its circumference is 25,000 miles and that it contains many countries of vast areas, many high, long mountain ranges, hundreds of broad and long winding rivers, several lakes, oceans bigger than the continents, and innumerable wide expanses of land in it, it is but natural for him to think at the time what a big affair this earth of ours is. But when astronomy teaches him that this earth is only a planet a mere satellite of our sun, which is but a star, that there are innumerable clusters of stars bigger than our sun, which itself is a satellite of another bigger star, and that universe is composed of an infinite number of such stars. I'm not sure what he means by that our sun is a satellite of another bigger star. It's one of many stars, and it's rotating around in a galaxy, but it doesn't have a companion star. Anyway, the universe is composed of an infinite number of such stars. The Earth is then naturally left out of consideration. In the limitless ocean of the universe, the Earth then appears to be a mere bubble. And in the same way, when eternal life is considered, the small, transient, earthly life is almost overlooked at the time. The astronomers calculate the distances of the heavenly bodies by assuming the Earth as a mere point. Similarly, the man who fully understands that his life is eternal, to him, his transient earthly connection appears as insignificant. Earthly attractions cannot bend him at the time. They naturally fall off from him when the true nature of the self makes its appearance in him, even as the petals of flowers fall off when the fruit grows. Thus, getting free of all earthly bondage, man becomes a liberated soul, or a mukta purusha. He conquers the earth and comes out a victor. And indeed, he, at the time that he was writing, Hubble hadn't made his discoveries, that we were simply one galaxy in a sea of galaxies. We thought the Milky Way galaxy was the galaxy, and that we were in the Milky Way galaxy. And the only other galaxy that was particularly visible was Andromeda, and it was just a smudge. And so they thought it was a nebula. They thought it was like many of the other nebulas, like the so-called planetary nebulas. You know, the astronomers name these things before they know what they are, and then they find out that they're not so bright. In fact, there's one named after the astronomers who named these things planetary nebulas. It's called the Dumbbell Nebula. And so they just thought it was another one of these nebulas, which is now we know is the dust of an exploded star. And then there are, of course, globular cluster nebulas, which are globular clusters, which are maybe 500,000 stars in a bunch that sort of bebop in and out of our galaxy on highly elliptical orbits. But then Hubble discovered that the Andromeda was not that kind of a nebula, but it itself was a whole galaxy filled with stars and looking very much probably like our galaxy, only a little bigger. It's our big sister. And so then they discovered that there were many, many galaxies out there, and that they all seem to be going away from us. I don't know why they don't like us anymore. So, so we seem very insignificant, even when you consider that we're one little tiny dot in the speck of a big galaxy. And then when you consider that our galaxy is just a speck among billions of galaxies, it becomes even less significant. And with our new telescopes, both the Hubble and the James Webb Telescope have stared at dark patches of the sky that didn't seem to have anything in them. And if they leave them there sitting long enough, collecting light in their big buckets, they find that there are hundreds and hundreds of galaxies just in that one little spot of the night sky. And if you figure that's going to be repeated in every little spot they look at, you get an awful lot of galaxies. And so we can't be very proud of who we are or where we are. And of course, we also know that the sun is going to go through its life cycle, and before it reaches the end of its life cycle, it's going to swell up into a big red giant and swallow up the all the inner planets, including the Earth. And so don't get attached. I know it's not going to happen tomorrow, but of course there are all sorts of other things that could happen tomorrow. Cosmic ray bursts from the death of some giant star that radiates the solar system, or our particular solar system, with radiation. We could lose our ozone layer. We could, when the poles shift, that's a big danger too, that the magnetic field will weaken, and we could get extra ultraviolet radiation. We could have several volcanoes going off at once and smothering the earth with a layer of ash that causes a volcanic winter. All sorts of fun things can happen. Mother Nature has a lot of fun. So there are all sorts of interesting ways that things can change drastically. Here, a question. Now, this is our 4-page paragraph. Here, a question may be raised that if the overlooking of death and considering oneself as immortal constitutes the sign of a liberated man, every man of the world is such a one. The worldly man never thinks of death at all. He enjoys life here like an immortal God. Why should he not be classed among the liberated souls? To answer this, let us see whether he really thinks or believes himself immortal. No, that is not the case. He only forgets that he will have to die someday or other, simply because his mind is so much engrossed in the pursuit of pleasure that he has no time to think about the real state of affairs which he is in. Forgetful he is not knowledge. There are two diametrically opposed things that no mistake of forgetfulness can ever bring about any good results. If a man mistakes a snake for a rope and wants to pick it up, he is sure to die, being bitten by the snake. If a candidate for a certain post is wanted to answer certain questions before he is admitted to it, and if his answers are full of mistakes, instead of getting the service, he will be rejected as downright fool by his superiors. Well, I'm not sure that's even the case anymore. You all remember the old movie? Some of you aren't old enough, but the old movie Pollyanna, the Disney movie Pollyanna. And that one, there's this preacher, hellfire and brimstone type of preacher. And Pollyanna finally converts him to being a really nice preacher, but his lecture that she's submitted to is one where he storms up onto the podium and yells, "Death comes unexpectedly." And he's got everybody shaking in their boots. It's a wonderful scene. Death comes unexpectedly. Oh, it's a memorable moment. Rent the movie if you haven't seen it. All right, so, and if he goes on committing such mistakes all his life, he is sure to lead a very miserable life, for no one will give him anything to eat, thinking him to be an altogether useless fellow. Mistakes, therefore, always bring on disastrous results. How can they therefore perform any good results in the case of the man who mistakes an impermanent life for a permanent one, and then foolishly thinks that the ephemeral connection with his wife and family to be eternal? Of course, some of our religions teach that after death you'll be your perfect 24-year-old in perfect health, and all of your relatives will be there, assuming that they were all of the same only true religion, and you'll all live happily ever after. Now, I'm not sure how that works, whether your parents are also going to look like they're 24-year-old, and I don't know. But anyway, it's a nice picture. For it is not sane to think this limited and precarious life to be eternal and certain, forgetting the really eternal life altogether, of which The earthly life is but an extremely minute fraction, and is not this case the case with all worldly people? So we must not confound such a man with a liberated soul. We have seen that human life is a constant struggle, and the man finds a peculiar pleasure in such struggles. But the very fact of his struggle shows that he is not satisfied with the condition of his world, however affluent and happy he may appear to be. Even the extremely worldly man, although he is perfectly satisfied with his life, has daily struggle to appease his hunger and thirst, his passions and appetites. Man struggles to get rest. Because hunger makes him restless, he toils and gets some food, taking which he regains his much desired rest, although that is for a very short time. This we can understand very easily, for we have already seen that the soul of man by nature is one eternal and changeless entity which tries to assert itself in this changeful worldly life. That is the reason why every man wants and struggles for rest, as the state of rest is a changeless one. We have also seen that the attempt of man to make this earth full of bliss proves always fruitless. So always we have seen that all attempts to know anything about the mystery of creation is infinite and eternal, while man's life and intellect are very limited and ephemeral. When a man considers all these things properly, his desire for worldly knowledge vanishes, and he desires to know who he really is. He detects the falsity of worldliness and repudiates it. He no longer wants to remain ignorant of himself. He feels a necessity for his higher knowledge, and that leads him to seek the help of religion, which promises to illumine him on the subject. Since we just went through our Durga Puja season and talked about how the Chandi was an auspicious thing to read through and to chant the hymns and so forth, this kind of reminds me of the three parables that are told in the Chandi. They are about different kinds of demons, which are really our inner demons, that are our natural tendency to not seek religion, to either just never get started, that's the first story, or to keep ourselves very busy with all sorts of things other than the real purpose of life, or to indulge in all the finer things of life and want to collect all the lovely, beautiful things in the world. And eventually we find that none of those things are really very satisfying, and we get down to work for the real purpose of life. So we see that the necessity of religion is felt only by people who have learned to see the world rightly, and who are not therefore liable to commit any mistake. Yes, and as we've said before, it's said that people that come to spiritual life have lived many lives, and they've had all these different kinds of experiences, and eventually you find that you're tired of those, and your soul is tired of them. And so that's why some people seem to just gravitate to religion, and others are still trying to find some sort of pleasure in worldly experiences. And of course, all of us still have some tendencies of trying to find some sort of pleasure in life. It's difficult to avoid, but we have this other tendency in us which has also seen that we kind of know in the background that even though these things are tempting and we still perhaps run after some of them, we know in our hearts that that's not really going to satisfy us, but we're going to just go after it for a while just to amuse ourselves and then get back to our spiritual problems and our spiritual practices. For the world which they fondly cherishes their home, sweet home, has many things to interest them, but as we have seen, that mistake can never bring about any good results. It should be the bounden duty of all men, whether they be worldly or godly, to do away with it as much as possible. And I think we've talked about how the infinite is sought after in freedom, and the undivided is sought after in love, and the changeless is sought at in peace and security. And we also find, as he's already kind of hinted at, that these tend to conflict. You search for some security and finding food and so forth, and so you have to be busy doing that. So you're not changeless, you're not peaceful, because you're searching after food and shelter. And you want love, so then you find love, but then you find that you've lost some of your freedom, because that person also has various desires that they want to fulfill. And you have to spend time with them, and you have to provide for them, and so forth. So all these things sought after in the world tend to conflict with each other. Disease of the mind should not be harbored on any account, because it makes a weak and emaciated person think himself very strong and stout. The patient must be given proper medicine to dispel the mistake from him, although he may not find the necessity of taking any medicine at all. Similarly, although a worldly man may not find any necessity for religion, he should be made to imbibe religion, for only then he will cease to have this mistaken notion about the world and cease to grasp it, a veritable snake to his bosom, thinking it to be a fine-looking garland. Only then he will see things as they are, get rid of all worldly bondages, and effect his freedom, after knowing the mirage-like unsubstantiality of the world. Thus we have seen this religion is necessary for all, for the foolish as well as the wise. And what is religion? Religion is that which enables us to know who we are. It is the loving, unselfish, and kind guide that takes us by the hand and leads us to the throne of truth. And innumerable are the paths through which it leads us thither. One of those paths we have already described, namely the path of reasoning, or jnana marga, going through which we learn that we are not changing and ephemeral like the body, but eternal and changeless entities without birth and death, that the world is not a proper home for us, but merely a place of our sojourn. There is another path which is subdivided into innumerable different paths, and which is called by the path of love, or bhakti marga. Let us see what bhakti marga is, how through it religion takes us to the goal, and what that goal is. Studying ourselves, we find that we are intelligent beings, and the intelligence is manifest in harmony, law, and order. In a house where everything is in a chaotic state or confusion, say the chair is there where the tub should be, and the table is upturned with legs pointing up to the sky, the pillow lies in the kitchen, while the bedding is scattered in all directions, all over the compound, we at once conclude that no intelligent being has been living there for a long time. The house has been uninhabited by man. On the other hand, where there is order and arrangement, although no man is visible there, we conclude that some person has been surely living there. Otherwise, how can there be such nice arrangements everywhere? So whenever there is law, order, and arrangements, we are forced to conclude that there must be an intelligent being behind it. This being the case, when we look into the world and find there everything regulated by eternal law, winter followed by summer and day following night, with unerring precision, the wants and necessities of every season being exactly met by timely useful production of fauna and flora, we cannot but conclude that an intelligent power remains always behind creation to regulate and direct it. Looking at the workings of that being, we cannot but conclude that he is an all-intelligent and all merciful, powerful, who is always engaged in supplying all our wants so as to make us comfortable as possible. Hence, we are forced to call him our real Father and Mother. As creation is eternal, Creator must also be eternal, and since it requires an infinite amount of power to regulate, order, and arrange the infinite number of worlds, he must necessarily be all-powerful, all-intelligent, all-knowing, and all-merciful, all-loving, and all-good, our all-good Father and Mother in one. The dull, dead, material world falls down, and God rises in its stead to plunge the victor in eternal bliss. So, of course, that's the idea behind Bhakti Yoga, is to feel that there is a personification of that infinite power that's behind the universe. And it doesn't have to be personified. You can leave it unpersonified if you prefer. But it's easier for most people to imagine it as some sort of personification. And if you study religions all over the world, including some of the current ones, you find that there's usually one supreme deity, and sometimes that supreme deity then sort of divvies up the power and into several subcategories and manifests as many deities. This is certainly still the way in Hinduism, that has the idea of personal gods. The personal gods are all divisions of the one deity. And in the Chandi, we found that it was personified as the Divine Mother, embodying Shakti power, and that Shakti power was then divvied up among all the different gods and goddesses and devas, from the highest to the lowest of these eternal shining beings, each one with particular tasks or powers or duties. And then in the second narrative of the Chandi, we find that unlike Humpty Dumpty, that couldn't be put back together again, the Divine Mother could be put back together again and called upon in her ultimate glorious condition as a single goddess. And so all the devas and gods and goddesses were called upon to take the Shakti power within them and manifest it in the power of one single Devi. Then the Devi chose to, in the third story, she chooses to manifest as several different Shakti powers. It's usually considered, sometimes it's the 7 little mothers, sometimes it's looked at as 9 different Shakti powers. There are different ways that it's described, but she's divided herself into many different Devis that then fight off all the demonic forces. And then she's called upon to coalesce them all back together again into one great Devi in the form of Ambika in the very last battle scene. So it's a fluid situation, and it's up to the likes and dislikes of the devotee to decide how they want to picture this Shakti power. If you can just imagine it as undifferentiated Shakti power, more power to you. If you need to personify it in a particular form, that's fine too. She will manifest the way that you would like to see her. And the same thing with the male aspect. If you prefer male aspects, you can call upon the male aspect to personify itself in any particular form. And we're very lucky that we've had current incarnations of Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Sarada Devi, which practice so many different spiritual disciplines and manifest themselves in different forms. People would actually experience seeing them as manifestations of different deities, that we can picture any one of these manifestations as residing within either one of them. And indeed, they are like one entity. We think of them as Ramakrishna and Sri Sarada Devi, but they're really inseparable. They are really one and the same power as well. So next week we will have our sound bath experience, so you're all welcome to join us. And of course that's will be online, but it's probably a slightly better experience if you can be here in person. And then it'll be vigil the next week, so we'll meet in the library. And the reason for that is because of Kali Puja will be the next Monday, and then the following Saturday will be the immersion. And so that Friday, they didn't want to have vigil because they'll be preparing the mother for the immersion event on the following Saturday. So it's a big month ahead, and we hope that you can join us for as many of those things as possible. And the other weekly, daily classes will be going on as usual. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Well, we made it through the 4-page paragraph.